Hey guys, welcome to our Zoom call. Sorry about the crazy message yesterday. I saw a few people had logged in yesterday, and so I was in a panic thinking I had the date wrong in my head. But I have it for tonight instead. So I met with a few people yesterday, and then I'll meet with whoever shows up tonight for our official Zoom call. But we'll give it a few more minutes to see if anybody else is logging on. Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm recording this Zoom session so that I can post it on the website for whoever can't make it tonight. But you guys that are on live, feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have any questions or anything. I'll just go over a few things I want to make sure everybody is aware of for the project, especially based on having done the project before and earlier today with my face-to-face class, some of the questions that they had. But this time is really for you guys to ask whatever questions you have. So go ahead and, like I said, interrupt me or ask whatever you want to ask. Does that sound good? So I've shared my screen with you guys, and I'm just on CourseDen right now in the major project module. Over here is where you're going to find your instructions, an overview of the major project, and understanding how your grade is going to be calculated for the project. All this is just in the module. You guys can click on it and see it for yourselves. But I wanted to just make sure that everyone has a chance to please read the instructions carefully and be aware of the limited resources I've given you for this project. And that's to help make sure this project doesn't get taken too far, like down the rabbit hole or blown too far out of proportion. I'm specifically looking on this project for the very initial stages of forming a business. So the only websites I've indicated you'll need to use are listed right here in this module. So it's the Georgia Secretary of State's website, IRS website, and the Georgia Code website, the OCGA. In addition to, of course, your textbook, you'll use that a lot for the foundation materials. And then feel free to ask me anything you want, and then whatever's on CourseDen that I posted. So for example, on CourseDen, I have a sample cover letter for you to use if you want. The first page of your project should be your cover letter. And this sample that I've created on here is just a Word document. And you can feel free to use it however you'd like. Just, you want to put your company name, whatever kind of entity you are, if you're an LLC, corporation, PC, whatever. And this is just a sample letter that you could just make your own. You can take as much or as little of it as you want to. I just didn't want that to be a component of the project you were having to spend a lot of time researching to learn about. Going back into the module, for the instructions, just again, I want to remind you that what you'll be turning in is one document for your project. So all of the forms that you might be using, the documents that you've created yourself for the project, I want everything in one file together. That way you get credit for everything you've created, and it's easy for me to just scroll back and forth to make sure you've included everything that you need to include. If you have any questions about whether something's an approved resource or not, please ask me, send me an email, send me a draft. A lot of students do fine on this, but there's always a few that just didn't read the instructions carefully and get in trouble for plagiarizing something they were supposed to create themselves. For example, like the governing document is one document that I'm asking you to create yourself for the project. So if you're an LLC, that governing document would be an operating agreement. If you're a corporation, that governing document would be your bylaws. A simple student created governing document based on what you've learned in your textbook is perfectly sufficient for the project. You'll get full credit. It'll be fine. If someone instead doesn't read the instructions carefully and they just go on LegalZoom and they purchase bylaws that are sample bylaws, or they download a free sample from some other website that wasn't created by them, they've gone outside the authorized resources and plagiarized a document they should have written themselves. And I'm asking you to please not do that. And so this is, again, it's in the instructions, but I'm giving you this warning on this, Q&A just to make sure that everyone understands, I'm looking for just a basic student created student created work. This project hopefully is more fun than taking a test on this material. And my hope is that for you, it's empowering, so that if you are ever in a position where you have an idea for a business and you want to get started and you don't have a lot of resources, you're like, you can think back on this experience and feel like it's something you could at least start yourself. So going back into the module, here are the PowerPoint slides for the business entity chapters. This slide section is just an overview of all 3 chapters put together. And in these slides, I have occasionally pages about the project with some tips and things that might help you as you're creating your project. So that's worth taking a look at. When you go to these websites, you won't necessarily need all 3 websites, depending on what entity type you're forming. I've linked the official code of Georgia because that's the only source available if you're forming an LLP, for example. The Georgia code is the only guidance you have, and you file those through the Superior Court. That's a really difficult entity type to form. So when you're deciding what to create for the project, you want to show me that you've learned that creating liability protection for yourself is important. You don't want to create an entity that has unlimited personal liability. And you learn some of those in chapter 16. When you get to chapter 17, you learn that limiting your liability is important. And same thing with chapter 18, limiting your liability through corporation structure is really valuable, important. But instead of me telling you what to create, I'm giving you the flexibility to create what you feel like is appropriate. But be aware that 20% of your grade, like 2 letter grades, easy off the bat, or 2 letter grades potentially lost, is based on what type of entity you form, because this is where you show me what you've learned and show me what you know. So I want you guys to make that decision really carefully, and remember, like, part of what you're trying to learn in this class is how to protect yourself from liability. So if you're thinking about forming a business entity type that leaves you vulnerable to unlimited personal liability, that's not a good choice for the project, nor would it be a good choice in real life. If you are working with a partner or 2, you can work in a group of up to 3 if you choose. Right here, I have the group member evaluation form, and everyone needs to fill this out individually. So you'll put your name, the name of the pretend business you created for the project, and you'll indicate whether your group members did or didn't participate equally in the assignment, and then how you kind of divided the tasks. And that's important for you to submit individually so that you can be candid on that form and be truthful about whether you got stuck doing all the work or if your partner did help appropriately. Let's see. The assignment Dropbox is also linked in this area. You'll upload your file and submit it to the Dropbox before the deadline. I am extending the deadline for the project to Sunday at midnight. I have it due on a Thursday, and like if you were in class, you just submit it on the Thursday. It was kind of my thinking, but since everything else in our class goes until Sunday at midnight, I was worried that a little bit of a change in routine might be just enough to have it slip someone's mind, or they'd be turning it in late. And so in order to not have to have that problem, I'll just give you the extension. And so you have until Sunday, I think it's Sunday the 16th. So I'll update the assignment Dropbox for you guys with that extension for the project as well. So to take you through these resources, I kind of already talked about the OCGA as a resource. Again, that's one that only people really need if they're forming an LLP, which you're welcome to do. It does protect you from liability. It's just really complicated and difficult to form it correctly. So it's not one that I would necessarily recommend for the project, because you can have that same kind of protection with other entity types, a corporation, an LLC, that are a lot easier to form. Let's see. This is the Georgia Secretary of State's website. Is it still sharing the screen even though I clicked on another tab?
Yeah, I still sharing the screen.
Okay, because I tried to share the whole browser, but I wasn't sure if I'd, have it shared correctly. But on the Secretary of State's website, when you go to the it says corporations division, but this is for all different kinds of entities that you might be forming in Georgia. And so for the project, we're forming it under Georgia law because we're in Georgia. There's a link that says forms, and this will take you to all the PDF versions of these forms on the Secretary of State's website. Because we're just doing this as a project, you're forming this business as a academic exercise. It's pretend business. I don't want you forming anything in real life. Like a lot of these websites, these government websites on the IRS website or Secretary of State, they encourage you to do online electronic filing, where it looks like you're just filling out forms, but it's recording that information. So I don't want anybody to accidentally create a business they didn't intend to create, or unintentionally request an employee identification number. And now all of a sudden the government thinks you started this business, and one of these days they might wonder where their tax revenue is for this business you just created. So just be careful to make sure that if you are completing a government form, which you will need to complete some government forms as part of your project, that you're completing them as PDF forms and just including them in your document. So here's the list of these PDF forms. Some of them are forms and some of them are information sheets. For example, this right here, these filing procedures are really useful guidance documents that kind of give you the minimum requirements to create these organizations. So if I was thinking about doing a corporation, I could click on the filing procedure for corporations, and it walks me through the steps: a name reservation form, articles of incorporation, all these kinds of things. It gives me a sample articles. Are you there? Okay, are you guys back with me again?
Yes.
Okay, my Zoom just completely crashed. So hopefully it doesn't do that again, but if it does that again, please just stay put and I will log back in. Or if it happens to you, if one of you gets logged out, just log back in. Hopefully that didn't mess up the recording of the Zoom call, but that was really weird. It just crashed and then logged me back in. But anyways, back to these filing procedure documents. They give you a lot of the minimum requirements, that you would need in Georgia of what forms you would need to create your business. So there's one for corporations. Here's one for limited liability companies. This is a really popular choice in real life, and therefore it's also a very popular choice for the project. Limited liability companies, as you learn from your textbook, are a more modern invention. They're kind of a hybrid form. And so they have a lot of benefits and flexibility and ease of creation, like someone would have for some of the other small business forms like sole proprietorship or partnership. However, they don't have the big disadvantage of those, which is unlimited liability. Sole proprietorship is a terrible choice for the project because you have limitless personal liability. And it's not a great choice in real life, even though it is common because it's just so easy and, free to create, because there isn't anything you have to really do to have a sole proprietorship. And with partnerships, you run into the same problem as a sole proprietorship, where you have this unlimited personal liability, but you also have the problem of liability of your partner. So you're on the hook personally for mistakes you might be responsible for and bad decisions that your partner is responsible for. You could end up holding the bag and having to pay off the judgments for those things. So those are not great choices for real life, but they're certainly terrible choices for the project, because you're showing what you've learned in these chapters and how to protect yourself, and neither one of those choices gives you protection. Okay, so here's paperwork for these minimal standards to create these organizations. A name reservation form In real life, you may or may not choose to reserve your name. For this project, you do want to do a name reservation form because it's how you show me that you understand the importance of a legally sufficient name. So for example, if you're creating an LLC, like in this paper, you want to have the name of your business and then the word LLC or the suffix LLC at the end to indicate that's the type of entity you've created. So if your business is called, you know, whatever, Sonic Master, it's Sonic Master LLC or something like that. If you are looking through this list, for example, let's say you decided to do an LLC and you see the word LLC on this list, you might be tempted to click on that document to see if that's something you need for the project. So I'll click on this document. It says Certificate of Authority for LLC. That seems reasonable, like it might be a document I need. When I open it up, I see a problem in the title. Anybody have a guess on why this document would be improper for the project? Anybody? Something stand out to you with the title?
It's foreign.
Yes, good job, Maria. It's for a foreign limited liability company. So that would be for a company that's outside the state of Georgia. For this project, you're creating a brand new LLC within the state of Georgia. So if anybody includes this form on their project, it would cause them to lose points. So you want to make sure that you're not including forms inappropriately, and also make sure that you are including the forms that are necessary to create your entity. One of the forms that's indicated in these filing procedures, for example, for an LLC, is a document called your Articles of Organization. So in this filing procedure paperwork, there's a sample. You can take this sample and copy and paste it into a Word document and then fill it out as it applies to your business. An alternative way to do this form would be to just see this filing template that says Articles of Organization. You can click there, and page 1 is just instructions. You don't need page 1. Page 2 would be Articles of Organization. So you just can type directly into it, you know, whatever you want to do, and it will save all of your information. And then to take one of these forms, if you want to put it into your document, what you would do, an easy kind of low tech way to do it would be to shrink the document to where you can see the whole document on your screen, and then use your print screen button to do a screen capture and paste that PDF image into your Word document. That way you're collecting the forms you filled out along with, you know, the first page is maybe your cover letter, and then you've got these government forms, you know, on page 2, page 3, whatever. And then you also would have some of the documents that you're creating yourself in that project. Does that make sense? There's other ways you can do it. You can use the PDF merging software where you save all of these completed PDFs, either save the PDF, or you can use the print button to do a print to PDF to get just the pages you want. That's an easy way to cut off these instruction pages, is just do print to PDF and then print just page 2, and it will print page 2 with all the information you've typed in. For example, on these Articles of Organization, this one is a little different than that first sample I showed you. The first sample had Article 1 with the name of the company, and then Article 2 was information about the management of the company. In this sample articles, it has the name of the company, and Article 2 indicates when it will be effective, either effective immediately or effective at a later date. I like both versions of the sample Article 2. So if you want to use either one, it's fine. If you want to add Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3, that's even better because you're telling the world how it's going to be managed and when it's going to be effective. I'm not going to count off if you do one or the other for the project. If you want to use just this fillable form, that's fine. I'll give you full credit. I just wanted to share that little extra bit of information that, you know, the more information you have like that, it is useful and relevant. And then down here at the bottom, you choose the capacity of the signer. So you have your signature, your printed name, the date that this document was executed. And then for capacity, as the owner of an LLC, for example, your capacity would be member. So the member of the LLC is the person who owns the LLC. So you want to make sure that you have selected the correct capacity if you're using one of these fill-in forms. And then for any other documents you create, like for example, your operating agreement or a record of your meeting minutes, or in your cover letter where you, at the very bottom, when you create your signature block where you sign and print your name, always indicate your capacity, because that shows your authority for executing that document. And if you're an LLC, remember that your capacity is member. Okay, another website that I have linked over here is the IRS website. Did it take you with me over here to the IRS website?
Yes.
So one thing that nearly everybody will need from the IRS website, there might be more than just one document, depending on if you're creating like an S Corp or a nonprofit or something like that. But universally, whatever you're creating, you're going to want to get apply for an employee identification number, your EIN. Your EIN is kind of like a social security number for your business. It's that unique identifier that the IRS can use to keep track of your record of your tax payments and tax liability. And when you know you're on this website to do an EIN, seems pretty logical to click this button where it says apply for an employee ID number. Well, when you click this link, it takes you to these pages that want you to apply online. And then hopefully you'll remember, I don't want to apply online. I just want PDF versions of these forms for this project because it's just pretend. So a quicker way to get that is just to do a search for an EIN application. And when you search for that, the form as a PDF, you see the little Adobe symbol right here, the PDF version of the form will come up on your search. And so this is what you actually want to complete for the project, is just this page 1 of the SS4. Again, you don't need page 2.
I can't hear you talking.
Oh, you can't hear me? Okay, so for page 1, that's what you would want to include on your project, is this form right here. And just like for the other ones, if you want to do a screen capture, just shrink the size down a little bit from 100% on your screen, whatever you need to shrink it down to so you can see the whole screen or the whole form on your screen, and then you can do a screenshot and paste it into your Word document. Or you can do print and print it to a PDF and just print that first page for your form. I do want to draw your attention though, when I did this search for an EIN application, the form came up as a PDF, but also right here, instructions for the form came up as a separate PDF. So in the Secretary of State's website where we were on earlier for the state of Georgia, the instructions are attached to those documents. They're not going to be listed separately, other than that one document that I showed you that was like filing procedures for the different entity types. On the IRS website, the instructions are different and listed separately. And as you can see, there's 6 pages of instructions for that 1-page form to fill out. And these instructions can be really useful to you. They will take you in the first part of this paper. It just gives you general instructions on how to fill it out. And then starting about midway through page 2 gives you specific instructions. And as you can see, it takes you line by line. Line 1, line 2, and it gives you scenarios of how to complete it for different types of, situations. And those instructions are really useful to make sure that you fill out the form correctly. These federal forms can sometimes be confusing. When we look back at the SS4, there's line 1, line 2, line 3, but then we have 4A, 4B, 5A, 5B, 6, and then 7A, 7B, 8A, 8B. So you can see it doesn't really make the same kind of logical sense that you might expect a form to make, where it just went like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So using those instructions and keeping them side by side, or printing the instructions and having them available right in front of you while you're filling out this form could be really helpful. Any questions about any of this stuff so far? Anybody? Okay, so that takes you through most of the government forms. I talked about the documents you'll create yourself. Obviously the cover letter, I gave you a sample, or you can do your own cover letter. And then another part of this project that's important is to make sure that you're maintaining good business records. That is what helps keep that bubble of protection secure. So you create that bubble when you form an entity that's different from yourself. So you create this legal entity under the law. And then by doing the business formalities, you help secure that protection bubble so that someone can't pierce it, like piercing the corporate veil. And so business records are an important way to do that. And so what I want you to do for the project to show your commitment to keeping formal business records is to include one page that's like a checks page or a financial document page showing the expenses you had to form this business. I don't need a lot of pretend made up expenses. I'm just looking for like the fees that some of these forms charged you. So, when you're looking at the forms on the Secretary of State's website, there's a page right here that has a list of the different fees and stuff that different things cost. Some of the documents have a fee listed on the form itself. Like if you are applying for, let's see, where is the form for the name reservation? Okay. So, if you're filling out the name reservation form, it says right here, the filing fee for this form is $25. So you can put a check on your checks page that says $25 fee for the name reservation form paid to the Secretary of State. Does that make sense? So that's what you'll do in your checks page. And then the other document that I want you to create that shows me that you're following those corporate formalities would be a record of your first organizational meeting. So that doesn't need to be anything fancy or complicated. For that document, I'm just looking for a page in your project that says, has a title to let me know what it is. This is a meeting record from your first organizational meeting and of, the name of your company, whatever it is, ABC Company LLC or whatever. And then you say like, I, Tanya Thomas, met on October 4th at 6:00 p.m. in the Ingram Library. I decided I'm going to purchase a website for my business. I'm going to look at some office space to rent. And I voted to adopt my operating agreement because for an LLC, your operating agreement is your governing document. So I would vote that in, even though it was just me by myself. I'm keeping a record of what the business dealings are to show the world I'm going through these efforts of the business formalities. Because again, that helps strengthen that corporate veil so that someone can't pierce it in litigation. And then of course the governing document, which is your operating agreement. From you can either use your textbook or in the slides for the overview of business entities. Either one has a section on the LLC operating agreement, for example, and it will give you a list of a half a dozen provisions that someone would typically include in an operating agreement. There's your paragraphs. Article 1, first topic. Article 2, the second topic. Article 3, the next topic.
I couldn't hear you.
And that way you have like a recipe on how to create your own operating agreement. One page is fine to take care of half a dozen topics. And then you just want to make sure it has a title, that it's titled, this is the operating agreement for such and such LLC. And at the very bottom, just like we saw on these sample documents for, the Secretary of State, when you're looking at one of these templates for anything, for articles of organization, the end of any of these official legal documents is always going to have some kind of line about executing the document. So right here it says, in witness whereof the undersigned has executed these articles of organization. You could use that same language and just say the undersigned has executed this operating agreement on this date, and then you'll put your signature, your name, and then your capacity is member, comma, whatever the name of your company is, LLC. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you guys have any specific questions or anything? I know I've been talking really fast over here, just kind of bumping through stuff, but.
So I have a question. I guess in terms of what going to be required is mostly organizing the documents that you would normally submit for an LLC or whatever entity you choose to form your business in. Is that what it's mostly going to be
Yes.
turned in?
So you're turning in the documents that you would create for this business. So, the final project is going to be probably less than a dozen pages. And it's going to be a combination of, the government forms that are necessary for your corporation or your LLC or whatever you're creating. And then those documents that I kind of just talked about that you'd create yourself, like your formal business records, financial records, meeting records, and then a governing document. So if you're a corporation, that would be like your bylaws that you wrote yourself based on what you learned in the book.
I'm on my Zoom and you get on my nerve.
Your operating agreement if you're an LLC, that kind of thing.
Okay. So I just wanted to say really quick.
Well, you should have had it recently.
I think the person with the letter M is a bot, so you may want to kick them out because I've had that before in other meetings that I've organized myself. So they have these things to disturb.
Okay.
Yeah, I just threw that out there because it's disturbing, and I think they're bots.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But did you have another question?
No, that was it. You answered it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How about anybody else? Do you guys have any other questions on combining documents or anything for specific entity type? Like, do you have any questions about specifically about a corporation or a nonprofit or anything like that? I know I've spent a lot of time talking about LLCs. It's usually typically I get a lot of LLCs for the project.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Okay,
Hello.
so when we're doing this business, what you're doing, so we're not doing it like anything like the financial parts or anything like that. It's just mostly dealing with the documents and stuff.
Right, because this is, your legal environment, like business law class. And so we're focusing on the business, like formation, like the legal requirements to get that business started. And part of your grade, 20% of your grade is going to be choosing an entity that gives you liability protection. So all the different entities that you learned about in chapter 16, 17, 18, making a good choice of entity. And then once you've selected that entity, providing the documentation specific for that type of business formation.
Okay.
Did that answer your question? I don't know.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, if that's all the questions for tonight, I guess I'll just wrap up our Zoom call so I can get it uploaded to CourseDen for other people in the class if they have questions they want to watch. If you guys think of questions afterwards or once you get started working on it, please don't hesitate to email me or text me with a quick question. I'm happy to answer your questions. And I'm also happy to review your drafts if you have any of those for me to look at. I have, 3 sections that I teach of this class. So that's potentially 150 projects. So like right before the due date, I may not be able to get feedback to you, but for guaranteed feedback, if you send me your drafts this week, then I promise I will get you feedback before the due date. So I hope you all enjoy your fall break. I know you're on fall break at the end of this week on Thursday and Friday. So I hope you stay safe and have fun and enjoy a couple of days off of class. For your project, I have the 3 chapters assigned, only chapter 16 for this week, and then chapter 17 and 18 are assigned for next week. Because of fall break, I didn't want to give you too much work for this week. But my personal recommendation is to go ahead and knock out those MindTap chapters as quickly as you can, because that is the foundation material for this project. And those are easy points that you don't want to forget about. You don't want to miss out on those homework points and get zeros on them accidentally just because you forgot to complete the homework. So if that's it, I will just say good night to you guys and thanks for jumping on the Zoom call with me.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You too.